Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video, talking another Star Trek episode here, original series, and I wanted to talk about how this one particular element of the end of this episode used to really agitate me, and it's not because of the writing. It's a beautifully written episode. The acting is fantastic. It is true poetry in motion, something that the original series, I've always said that, like, because they couldn't show stuff on screen, they had to think their way around it. Unfortunately, today we can show anything, so we never think about it, but that's a rant for another time. What really struck me about this episode was its ending. The episode is Requiem for Methuselah, and I won't spoil a heck of a lot. Basically, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy go to a planet. They meet Flint, who has been there for a long time, and Flint has himself a companion called Rayna. Kirk falls in love with Rayna, and that leads to how the climax of the episode runs. Now, for those who are critical of the original series, there is this trope of, oh my god, Kirk gets the girl again. And those who are always sort of cynical about that tend to wreck the very last line of this episode. And that's what I wanted to talk about. The very last sentence that is said in this particular episode. It always struck me as really powerful and a moving moment, and people would always wreck it. And I'm wondering, does that ever happen to you? Is there like a certain bit in a show or movie that you always love, but somebody always comes in and kind of is snide about it and wrecks it for you? Because that's what I'm basically wanting to talk about. So, again, without spoiling too much about the episode, Kirk falls in love with Rayna. Flint has been in love with Rayna. And at the end, Kirk is sad that they have now parted company. They're flying off in the Enterprise. Spock walks in, and there's a great moment that Shatner really delivers well, and Nimoy's great in this too. You know, we are now leaving, and Kirk is sort of sitting there despondent at his desk, and he's musing about Flint being a very old and lonely man. And then he refers to a very young and lonely man, meaning himself. And then he kind of puts his head down and he goes, if only I could forget. And there's a nice pause, and then Dr. McCoy walks in about to say something. He's like, oh, he's finally asleep. I'll let him rest. Spock turns to him, your report, Doctor. And McCoy's like, oh, it's to do with Flint. I can wait till later. And he looks down at Kirk, and he says, you know, he really loved that woman. If only he could forget. I'll see you later, Spock. And he heads out of the room. And this is the moment. This is this beautiful sequence that forever gets ruined for me, and it drives me crazy. I think I had watched it once on my own, babysitting somebody or something like that. An old episode of Star Trek. I'll watch Requiem for Methuselah. That's great. And there is Kirk with his head down, and Spock sort of leans forward, and the music is just so well paced and beautifully orchestrated. Spock kind of leans in and does a Vulcan mind meld, and he's at Kirk, and he looks up. And the last line that I never get to hear, he says, forget. And then the credits roll. And it's like this beautiful, Kirk really loved this woman. McCoy just said so. And now he's despondent and he's sad. And Spock uses the Vulcan mind meld to stop that, to basically tell him, forget, to brush it away, like a bit of magic for the plot line. There you go. You are now solved. You are healed of your love wound, your love sickness, or whatever. And I remember watching that, and it was one of the first times I was really like, wow, the original series really had some poetry in what it was saying and how it was performed and who was doing what in the scene. And I love that about the show. I grew to really respect that about the original series, something that Next Gen would occasionally manage to do successfully as well. I don't think a lot of other shows have ever done it. But with the original series, I loved that moment, and I loved how that little scene, it's very small. It's just a couple of guys on the screen. There's no special effects. There's no big wow factor. But it's just, here, I will relieve you of your pain. I will make you forget. Beautiful. Do I ever get to hear that line? No. Every time I'm sitting with anybody else in the room, and Kirk is like, oh, he was a very old and lonely man, and I'm a very young and lonely man. You get snide comments from the back corner. Like, yeah, sure, wait till next week to see the Green Woman or whatever. Like, everybody is always very quick to be cynical about Kirk in that scene. And I'm just thinking, shut up. You're ruining this beautiful moment here. And then Spock would lean down and there'd be comments from the peanut gallery. Somebody would be like, oh, God, this is such crap. Or, another notch for your belt there, Kirk, and stuff. And I'm like, would you shut up? Spock is saying forget. And if you've been paying attention to the plot, you know that this moment is poetry. It's a beautiful scene. Would you shut up and let me enjoy it? Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that because that was something in Requiem for Methuselah, an episode that doesn't get a lot of love out there. I could talk the big episodes of original series, but everybody has. For me, Requiem for Methuselah, especially that last line, forget. Like, it just tugs at your heartstrings, and everybody would always interrupt it, and it would drive me crazy. Anyway, I'm going to try and embrace some of that Vulcan logic and just be very calm and rational. Anyway, so there is a little bit of a weird analysis of a Star Trek episode. Hope you enjoyed that. And until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.